Hello, I'm Dr. Kathleen Hall, and this is The Way I See It.
And my name's John Bailey. You can call me Bailey, and this is The Way I See It.
Hi, darling.
Hello.
Here we are. This is one of my favorite times of year.
Back at it.
I'm telling you, I love it. Now, I know it's February, and it's cold, and it's rainy, and it's supposed to snow tomorrow, and we're in Atlanta.
Boo.
And all this other stuff. And it's been raining for God knows how many weeks.
Weeks and weeks.
But
Why?
the good news is, one of my favorite times of year is Lent. I know it may seem weird. Lent, the 40 days before Easter. Are you familiar with it?
I am familiar with it. I didn't grow up Catholic in a Catholic household, but we did do some Lent things in my childhood. Yeah. We did no soda, actually.
Serious? Oh, that is so cool.
We were really big on Pepsi. My parents are from up north.
Oh, God,
Yeah.
yes.
See, but you can see right now.
Talk about the Antichrist.
I've been converted to the Southern culture.
He's got an adorable red shirt on with bright red buttons, and it says Coca-Cola all over it. Where did you find that shirt? I adore it.
I think I can't remember, but
I love it.
You know, my significant other works at Coca-Cola corporate.
Okay.
And I had this before she worked there, too, so I was already loyal to the brand. But when we would do Lent in my childhood, we didn't drink Pepsi.
Yeah, well, Pepsi, of course, is the Antichrist in our home.
Especially to Atlanta.
Yes, and my husband is from South Georgia. They never saw
Coke
Pepsi in their
Coke
life.
and peanuts. Has he ever put peanuts in Coke?
Yes,
That's when you know you're a good old boy.
Yeah, and you pull the Coke out of the water in the little coolers.
Oh,
of
yeah,
course,
buddy.
It is hardware store. But they don't know about Lent because he grew up Baptist.
Yeah.
So it was really not a big deal. But I did, and I grew up very Catholic, Roman Catholic, and my mother was very spiritual, very religious. Mm-hmm. And so she actually took the week before Lent, and every night we would sit there at the supper table, and back then it was, what would you give up? So, you know, you gave up candy, you gave up being angry, you gave up, hitting your sister, whatever it was.
Right.
But it was all the idea of giving up. And I think it's pretty interesting because formatively in a child's mind, it's about me. Like, I want my doll, I want candy, I want something. Mm-hmm. So what that ritual does, I think, is it establishes, I think, for the first time cognitively and spiritually and societally in a child's soul, this is 40 days or a ritual time of, introspection, maybe going in or giving up. Like, I am not going to eat candy. And what does that mean for self-sacrifice? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is volunteering. Like, we went to a place once a week and took care of very poor children during the Lent time. So it was also one of service.
I like that.
And so it became this time, and each of us would have shoe boxes under our bed. So any candy people gave us, any sweets, you'd put it in the box. And it was thrilling because you saw it build up for 40 days.
Oh, and you had a stash.
Yes, the stash. And, of course, some other families cheated on Sunday because they didn't count Sunday as part of the Lent, and you got to have one piece of candy. But my mother was Irish Catholic, so, of course, there was none of that going on.
Oh, no.
It was the straight 40 days. And then my father, who was grew up in a very, very different theological conservative, he hated Catholics, hated Lent,
Great
hated
family
everything.
dynamic.
It was an interesting dynamic.
I'm sure.
So he watched this Houdini stuff for 40 days and would go, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" So it was a really cool thing. And the reason I wanted to talk about it in our podcast is because, Bailey, we live in a world of people that with all of this virtual internet and whatever, what I'm really concerned about, one of my big concerns, as you well know, is we humans need stories. We need cultures. We need rituals as part of our being, our purpose and our meaning in life.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And people are not religious anymore. I'm one of those, not really religious. And I taught world religions and did all that stuff in previous lives, but no more. Mm-hmm. But very spiritual.
Right.
And I think that we need to recontextualize, if that's a word, put Lent in a different kind of a context, instead of one of sacrifice and ascetic practices, that maybe it needs to shift into a unbelievable ritualistic time once a year, when you can really take on a habit, something that you've been carrying around, maybe from childhood, something in a relationship psychologically, an addiction, whatever you're doing, to maybe focus on it. And also, 40 days is a good time. It can be a disciplined time to wake up. And another metaphor that I've used lately is spring cleaning, because spring is this. It comes in the middle of Lent.
Exactly.
And so Lent can almost be like a spring cleaning for your soul, your house, your work, relationships. So if people don't like, if they're hooked on that word, that term, these 40 days can be kind of
like a rejuvenation of sorts.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is what the whole idea of spring is. It's rejuvenation.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think especially in families too, or in families, meaning even you and your beloved, it doesn't mean children or marriage, but in families, because we all create different families now, that we need to reinstitute and embrace rituals, loving rituals, healing rituals. And I think this is one that is easy and wonderful and something that you can incorporate into your life. And also the second part of us being people of a story, humans, and ritual, and needing cultural norms to guide us. I think another important thing is discipline. It's a time of discipline, and we're not really living in a very disciplined world.
No, we aren't.
Yeah, you can tweet anything you want. You can say anything you want. If I don't like it, I can delete you or disconnect from you or defriend you or whatever the situation is.
Yep.
Whereas historically, if you lived in a village or a town, or you worked at my husband's hardware store, I still had to work with Bailey. I still had to see Fred at the gas station.
Or at least see you on Main Street, whenever you're going outside to pick up the milk or
exactly.
something.
Or you all went to the same church and you had to sit. You may sit in different pews, but you still had to deal with people.
Exactly.
Nowadays, we can withdraw and just take our little cards or our little jelly beans and go home. So it's a completely different culture. And so I think also to think of these 40 days as a possibility for not only ritual, but also as a time of self-discipline, which is something we don't have.
Yeah.
And a person, I happen to be a Benedictine oblate at a Benedictine monastery at these radical, feminist, wild women who I worship and adore.
Oh,
Most of them are teachers. One's a doctor, one's a lawyer. And Sister Joan Chittister, who is a well-renowned, heaven knows how many books she's written, how many millions and millions and millions of copies she's sold globally. But she's an amazingly wise, brilliant, loving person. And Sister Joan Chittister talks about Lent in a very loving way. And she talks about the ascetics of it. And again, me being a person who taught world religion, asceticism was one of monks that went into the desert, or priests and nuns and monks that went and withdrew from the world, and very disciplined, harsh, lots of times, things to themselves, starving, not eating, praying 20 hours a day, and things like that.
Right.
So she takes that and goes, that's the old historical way that it was looked at. And she did this really interesting article, Bailey, where she talked about shifting asceticism to the term self-discipline. And she said, for an example, if you look at a great athlete, Kobe Bryant, God bless his soul, this man, she compares like him to an ascetic, meaning that he was disciplined in what he ate, how he exercised, how
I see.
He was disciplined even when, God bless him, the helicopter crash, that he took that practice of taking a helicopter because he adored his family and wanted to spend those 2 or 3 more hours instead of a commute.
And was disciplined in that practice
exactly,
too.
with his family.
Yeah.
And so she takes the negative or the underbelly of asceticism and says, it's just sheer self-discipline, which we are longing for in our world today.
And lacking.
Yeah. And it was interesting. Yesterday, I gave a training, a speech, a big thing at a hospital here in Atlanta. It's a hospital concern that has 35,000 employees, kind of a big place. And one of the women, after I gave my presentation, came up and she said, Dr. Hall, thank you for this talk, blah, blah, blah. And she said, and I touched her hand and I said, you look so tired. And she said, yeah. She said, I'm training for a marathon.
Oh.
And she said,
wow.
I was an athlete. I became a mom. I work here and, I do all this stuff. And she said, I thought, you know what? There's a marathon right after Easter. This is what she said. It ties in perfect with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And she said, so I thought, I'm going to be self-disciplined and train for this marathon. So she said, and I've had to change what I eat, sleeping, exercising. I had to have a trainer so I don't hurt my muscles and my legs and everything. Mm-hmm. And she said, so, I'm not used to it yet. And she said, but I figure in about 40 days, now this is going to tie into what you and I are going to talk about next. I looked at her, I went, 40 days? And she said, yes. She said, my marathon trainer said it, in 40 days, my body will shift, my cells will shift. And so I'm really trying to get past the hump right now. So that was also what inspired me.
I like how you didn't tell me this story in pre-production and just waited to drop this bomb on me. That's awesome.
Yeah, and so
that's great.
And so it was really beautiful because her arc of holding on to the pain or being tired or being hungry or missing her cheesecake was she was holding on to that 40-day arc and that cusp, that touchstone at the end of 40 days.
Yeah.
So I got in the car and I drove, when Vanna was driving me home, I thought, wow, this ties into exactly what I would love. I would love, because I love Lent, and I would love to do a podcast on this to invite that I don't care if you're Islam, I don't care if you're Hindu, I don't care if you're atheist, agnostic, I don't care what flavor of Baskin Robbins you are. I just think it's a time, what if the whole world, okay, now I'm going to start crying. You know me, I get emotional.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a bad accident, as you know, and I'm on steroids, so I'm very emotional with my prednisone, is that, can you imagine in this divided political climate, this world that is trying to find its way to meaning and purpose.
Right.
Can you imagine if the whole world took 40 days? 40 days.
And just, yeah.
Yeah. And we had 40 days of a healing ritual that we said, we're all going to be better and different through self-discipline, through maybe giving up something or taking on something.
Right.
Maybe working at a shelter or maybe whatever it would be to open our hearts and minds and souls and bring your partner, your family, do it at work. If corporations did, hey, let's do a 40-day thing here and maybe not call it Lent, whatever, but
right.
But I'm a dreamer, of course.
Yeah.
I was dreaming this on the way back after she said that. And I started tearing up at the traffic light and getting really emotional and said, oh my gosh, I can't imagine how the world could change.
If only.
And then I got fascinated when I came home last night, and I was thinking about the 40-day thing. So why the 40 days? And I went, 40 days, is it a superstition? And then I remembered that when I was at Emory in one of my series, my degrees, as you well know, this particular one was, I think it was Master's of Divinity. I was in seminary, and I was taking all the books of the Bible, and being raised Catholic, of course, I'd really never seen a Bible because priests, we weren't allowed to see Bibles back then because they were the interpreters, baby, and they were the
gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
And so you didn't. I'd heard about him.
Yeah.
And I saw it sitting up there, but I had not seen a Bible. So it was unbelievable. And one of the things that was interesting to me was how the number 40 would show up in the Old Testament and the New Testament a lot.
Yeah.
And then when I got a doctorate in spirituality, 40 days was instrumental in a lot of other things. And so I remembered 6 different places. One was from my yoga teacher in Kundalini yoga. You practice yoga for 40 consecutive days to make or break a habit. And I remember she had mentioned the 40 days, and I said, that is so interesting. And whether it was the Upanishads or the Vedas, which are some of the most ancient texts, ancient texts in the world, going back, 10,000 years or whatever, they had 40 days. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
So, and it was how to break or change the body, okay? And meaning if you came and you had a neck injury or you were stiff or angry and or stumped over or had a disease or sores, isn't it interesting that what would make them know or think that 40 days would change cellular tissue, change bones, change your brain? It's kind of interesting. And then another one was 40 days has huge sacred reverence throughout Judaism. There's a mystical practice that says that one who seeks an answer to their prayers, that whatever you want, a new job, heal a disease, whatever it is, you must do the prayer request for exactly 40 days. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
I thought that was interesting. Also for Christians, again, during Lent, it's a 40-day thing. And also in other cultures around the world, Hinduism, Islam, Sikhism, and even in China, a new mother is confined to her home for 40 days after giving birth.
Wow, you didn't tell me that in pre-production.
Isn't that interesting?
That's cool.
So according to the Chinese culture, after the birth of a child, the mother's at her weakest, right after the baby's born.
It's a 40-day window.
So she has the baby, and she stays at home while the female members of her family take care of she and the child while she gets strong for that 40 days. And I think that's interesting because our daughter, who is now a physician, who's 44 years old, when I had her back at the Talmadge Hospital, which was the state charity hospital over in Augusta, I had an old-fashioned and an old female pediatrician. And so I saw her before the baby was born, and she said, now, Kathleen, after you have Brittany, because we already knew if it was a girl what we're going to name her.
Yeah.
She said, I want you cannot leave your apartment because we were poor. We lived in a one-bedroom efficiency at $312 a month.
Whoa.
Eat your heart out, honey.
I bet you missed that,
yeah,
man.
Maybe. And she said, but you cannot leave the baby for 40 days. I'll never forget this. And I sat there and I looked at her because Bing, remember Bing? I was devoutly Catholic way back then.
Yeah.
I went, 40 days. And then I remembered kind of like a Jesus fasting thing. I went, 40 days? She said, oh, yes. She said, I've studied around the world, and a lot of us think it's not just an old wives' tale about the immune system, breast milk, keeping the baby away from the influence of infection or anything else for 40 days.
Right.
Number one. Two is psychologically, you immerse yourself in bond, the security of a child for the first 40 days.
That's kind of what...
They're smelling their mother, touching their mother. And remember, they've been in a womb for 9 months, and we've thrown them out into cold air, sound, all kinds of acoustic light.
Oh, yeah.
And so the first 40 days is them getting accustomed to being human. So that came up to me, and I went, oh, my God, this is getting cooler by the moment. And then another one that I found that I had taught that, again, forgot about the 40 days, was after giving birth in Zoroastrian era, women remain secluded with their baby for 40 days. And again, this was to be purified from impurities of childbirth. Now, their philosophy were you were impure.
Okay.
The afterbirth that came out, remember, this is way back.
Yeah.
Thousands of years ago, they thought that it was the baby came out, but also the afterbirth, that there was something wrong. It was like awful and the woman was impure. That's why that stuff came out afterwards. And so after the 40-day ritual, she took a ritual bath, which allowed her to come back into the community.
Interesting.
So I thought that was like unbelievably cool. And then another one is that if you're, although this is a bit worrying because my handwriting's getting worse with age, I'm not sure if it's a psychological state, but also psychologists have said that it takes 40 days to break a bad habit, a bad ritual.
I've heard that as well.
And so I had a handwriting person that was trying to learn calligraphy and handwriting, and she spouted out, this would be 10 years ago, oh, it takes 40 days to get the rhythm and learn how to do it. And I went, why 40 days? And she said, because it's just the way the hand and the brain work, so that they're married to each other. And it's like an inhale and an exhale. She said that when you're writing, the rhythm of your breath, the rhythm of your brain, it takes about 40 days if you want to change everything about your handwriting. Wow. I just thought, oh my God, it's like your hand, right, and your brain and your heart falling in love again. And your soul.
Into the synchrony.
Into the synchrony of falling in love again. And you're the music person.
Yeah.
So isn't that cool?
That's
and then
crazy.
Finally, psychologically and physiologically, I think, you know how I love physics and I love biology. Everybody in this family is medical. Our skin cells, on an average, take 40 days to renew. Our red blood cells start dying from 40 days onward, and the sperm count can be increased after 40 days. These are all biomarkers. So now here we're coming to the big question I'm going to ask you, and I know you're going to have the answer.
What's that?
How, before science, before physics, before we had equipment, how in the world did our spiritual texts, our religious texts, and everything know this 40-day cellular biology, the brain, behavior, blood cells replenish in 40 days and die? what is it just not?
Is there something just intrinsic, like built in, that
us.
we just can wrap our head around that on some kind of crazy level?
It's kind of like you and I've talked. We live in we live in 3 dimensions. I personally, of all the people I've lived with and studied with, I believe there are 1 million dimensions on other planets, universes, galaxies, and we only access, because of the way we live on Earth, where we only allow ourselves, out of fear, anxiety, or whatever it is, access to maybe 3 dimensions, and there are thousands of them or millions out there. Yeah. And I believe that these beings, us, of course, I have a friend who's into extraterrestrials, and she thinks the extraterrestrials came and, let us know about all this 40-day stuff. But that's a whole nother. That's a whole nother podcast.
I've heard that theory as well.
And we'll have this chick in. We'll have this chick in sometime, because that will be a fun podcast.
Oh yeah, yeah.
She's something else.
I've definitely heard that theory before. That all of this was, all of the source of our technology and all of these was like brought over by extraterrestrials, which,
hey, again,
I think there's a possibility for that. Not to get too out there.
No, but I think we need to do a podcast on this, because I just had somebody really interesting I talked to yesterday about this whole thing. But anyway,
really?
that he and I never get off subject, do we?
Never.
But
never.
Write that down. Note to self. We are going to talk about that, especially with my friend who is deeply involved with this whole thing, because she's fascinating. But you had mentioned in pre-production too a couple 40-day things that you had reflected on.
Yeah, and I grew up in a Southern Baptist home, so we still honored Lent in kind of a non-Catholic way, like with the Pepsi thing. But whenever we started talking about 40 days, I remembered the Great Flood with Noah, 40 days and 40 nights of rain. That's one that I knew right off the top. And then looking it up, it's his years, but 40 years that Moses wandered the desert. So the number 40, still kind of a big thing. Also, one thing that I'm just reading right here is it is the traditional belief that Jesus lay for 40 hours in the tomb.
Very
so
interesting.
Like we were saying, a religious kind of a genesis of it and a religious background, but if you take the religion out of it, it's still an awesome practice.
Well, here we had talked before about culture, meaning, storytelling.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's not if we're not religious, atheist, agnostic, whatever religion we are,
don't let it be a trigger to where you put it out.
Let us not rob our souls of the joy of and the experiential change and the cultivation of ourselves, physically, mentally, spiritually, by denying ourselves some kind of a 40-day process. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, and talking about that, here are some practices for you or your family. I thought I could maybe give a few tips on people that I know you can. This is just an invitation. Create your own. Have a family meeting with your kids or your partner. Go to work with your friend. You may want to change something at work in 40 days in the buddy system, or go talk to your boss or your supervisor and try something different. One of the ones is sleep. Well, a third of us are insomniacs. You may want to say, hey, for 40 days, I am going to just focus on sleep. And in that, I am going to paint my bedroom a calm color, like a turquoise, a soft blue, a pale white. I'm going to get a new alarm clock where I wake up with one of these new lights that is like the sun rising instead of an banging alarm, or nature sounds I'm going to wake up with.
You use that, don't you?
Absolutely.
Don't you have a nature sound
thing?
It's told me about that before.
Unbelievable. I wake up to birds waking me up and singing to me every morning
Cinderella.
of my life.
Or Snow White.
And also setting a timer an hour before. If you want to go to bed at 10, then you set it at 11, set it at 10. And at 10, you start your shutdown, meaning, go to your room, turn the temperature down.
Hot tea.
Yeah, exactly. Turn the temperature down to 62 degrees, which is what we hope. Maybe a fan, that sound, that ooh, and the moving of the air.
I like the fan. Are you a fan sleeper?
Oh, absolutely. Every night of my life.
I love the fan.
Clean sheets, have a technology basket. And if you, like me, if you read on Kindle, make sure you get some blue lens glasses, which cuts the light that could possibly stimulate you to stay awake.
Yep.
Spray some maybe lavender on your pillow. You may want to put a little aromatherapy on your little hands so that at night when you're turning, you smell it and it kind of softly puts you back to sleep. You may want to take a warm bath, which we know takes the body and helps it sleep. A warm shower also helps. But get these sleep practices, teach them to your children, your partner, and then you'll have not only go to sleep, but deeper REM sleep, which will change your life.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, in 40 days, you literally change your cellular structure and change, we know the plasticity of the brain. Mm-hmm. So you also change the way the brain thinks about sleep. Another thing that's a pretty good idea is food. Why not? I think that's really, if I remember correctly, we were not, of course, again, being devoutly Catholic, you didn't eat meat on Friday, of course.
Right.
And so you fasted
Were
and
you allowed
abstained.
to eat fish, or was it?
Fish, yes. So,
Yeah.
McDonald's fish sandwich
Yeah.
for 15 cents, and
Sweet.
French fries were 15, and the Coke was 15. 45 cents knocked it down for 7 kids, baby.
Oh, man.
And we
Take me
felt
back to
like
that.
we were in heaven. For a nickel and a dime, you get French fried potatoes, big, thick.
Is
shake.
that a jingle?
Yeah, of course. I'll have to sing it to you sometime
yeah.
since you're the music person.
Oh, my gosh.
Let's do a whole thing on jingles. Old jingles. I love them.
Anyway, jingles are great.
Do you see how he and I
There
go?
is a psychology
Okay, write
behind
that down
jingles.
too. I love jingles, and we're going to need to create
There
a
is a
jingle.
serious
I
psychology
think families
behind
ought to have
jingles.
their own jingles. I think individuals ought to have their own brand jingles. I'm very serious. Okay, we got to write that down because this is
Yeah.
another cool podcast. But anyway, so food. Okay, so I grew up with this. So in my infrastructure. So then when I became a student at the Dalai Lama, and then I did all the cardiac rehab, and the meat thing came up, it was pretty easy. Do you see in my mental construct? Because I was used to Lent. To go, okay, I'm just going to do meat substitutes. And, one day led to 2 to 3 to 5. And so it's been 30 years of no meat. But my point is food. Be mindful. No bad food, no good food, but be mindful. Maybe do a meatless Wednesday, Friday with your family.
Right.
And say we're doing this just as a discipline or a practice because we save more cows or save the planet, whatever terminology goes with your ethos.
And I'm going to just interject, I don't, I don't call myself a vegan because I am not a vegan. I eat honey. I have a leather wallet, so be that as it may, I don't eat a lot of animal protein by and large, special occasions, whatever. But it's kind of mainly for a selfish reason, if I'm being completely honest with you. It's if you don't eat animal protein, you eat more fruits and vegetables.
That's true.
So it's like, I just wanted to stress that to the people because, some people, when you say like, oh, give up meat for it, they think it's like, well, then I'm just not going to eat. No, substitute it with some really great food. If you do that for 40 days, your body will appreciate that.
And it's a beautiful mentoring relationship, again, for coworkers to watch you.
Yeah.
You can be the change they need to see. I'm very serious. Please don't underestimate the power of
if
your...
you do it under the umbrella of Lent, too, it's not, you're not going to be, we've all encountered vegans who proselytize.
Please.
And that's the number
Judgment,
one way.
Judgment.
That's the number one way to not get somebody open to the idea of not eating meat. So if you say, hey, I'm just doing it for Lent, and you try it out, you might end up sticking to it. In the very least, you rejuvenate your body. But like, if you do it under the umbrella of Lent, it's not as pushy as like
and my husband,
typical person pushing it on
Jim
you.
is a meat eater. He did it. And so, what he left with after many years is he still eats, chicken and stuff. And but 2 to 3 days a week, he does not eat meat. So it changed his life and also awareness. He was never aware of what. And here's another tragic thing. We need to move on. But I was up to see our horses, I guess, last week, and it was time to take the new babies off the veal to slaughter at the farm next to where the horses were.
Yeah.
And I didn't notice it. All of a sudden, I heard these babies crying. And so I looked over at the farm next door, and the horse trainer just looked at me and go, oh, don't worry, Dr. Hall. It's just they're hauling off the veal and da-da-da-da-da. And the mother's wailing for their babies. I was a wreck for 3 days. And I mean belly wailing. So if you don't think a cow has emotions, if you could have seen those mothers hitting the side of that truck because they took their babies away from them, trying to get to their babies, then the truck drove off. Now I'm sobbing. And I said, Jim, we have to leave. I can't. I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. And they drive off with the baby / veal. And the mothers wailed We came back the next morning to see one of my horses, and they were belly wailing, looking at the road. I cried. I'm telling you, me even remembering it here a week later, I'm just shaking inside.
I see tears in your eyes right now.
So it's a profound thing.
That's
so
one
all
thing
of us,
people just put out of their
but
mind.
my point is
let's
right.
Be
well,
honest.
let's be honest. We are urban. People don't live on a farm and see exactly what it is. And then on the same vein, another horse trainer that we have, he was bragging because they raised the cow and slaughtered it and ate the meat, and it was her Christmas present to have a huge feast off of the cow that they had fed for a period of time. No judgment here. I'm saying that we're all different.
Yeah.
So theirs was a celebration that they had fed it and petted it and talked to it and named it Frank or, whatever, and done it. And I thought, it's an interesting construct because we could not have two more opposite constructs, right? And I love them. I love their family. I love Hope. I love her husband. And she smiled and said it was one of the most amazing things to put that meat in my mouth. So see how different we all are?
Yeah.
And again, all of this is spiritual cultivation because I really had to work on no judgment, which is again.
I almost have less of a problem with that because if you're going to eat meat and it's
take
like
responsibility
a crazy,
for it.
Yeah, exactly. And if it's like a celebratory, rare thing, if everybody practiced the rare celebratory,
they eat it every
approach,
day.
Yeah,
But if they did, meant that watching I grew up in a farm in Ohio, so everybody was used to.
If our culture did it like that in a rare celebratory way,
it'd be
I think
different.
Everybody would be a lot better off.
Well, and also, like I said, I grew up in the farm when Ronnie next door and everybody, you had prize cows. We went to the county fair.
Mm-hmm.
We sat there. I fed it for a year with him, and then
just watched
then
it.
Then it just slaughtered it, and everybody got the meat. So I grew up that way.
Yeah,
so
harsh realities on a farm.
But I'm a different. Again, we all change. Hopefully we grow.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the food thing, and we got on meat, but that's any food.
Yeah.
Family gathering night, one night a week. If it's Wednesday, since that's when Ash Wednesday actually starts. Whatever day fits in with your calendar. Mm-hmm. You're driving kids to sports. Both of you work. Everything going on. Have it, whether it's a game the kids play. Board games are so huge. When you play a board game with your family, they're cognitively changing. They're watching you lose. They're watching you win. They're watching you negotiate, make strategic things. They're watching bullying. You are teaching them so many life skills when you play board games, not computer games, not virtual reality games. Board games where they're tactily touching pieces.
Highly, highly interactive. Like you said,
Exactly.
You learn how to win, you learn how to lose, which is very important in the game of life.
Exactly.
I'm not talking about the board game.
And kids, you're seeing colors of pieces. They're touching things. They're making choices.
Small motor movements,
Exactly. And they have to take
all
responsibility.
the things that someone could say playing a video game does well for you, you can get from a board game.
Absolutely.
Plus more.
Plus more.
So I do agree with that.
The relational thing.
Yeah.
Well, plus let's just talk about, we do studies about community and family and being in the presence of each other.
Right.
Awareness and in the presence. Not playing a game that's off. Me sitting across the board, touching you, looking at you, drinking our Coke, belly laughing, popcorn. Mm-hmm. It's a whole experience.
I'm convinced that's the only way that I can engage with people. The way that I can engage is because we played so many board games growing up, you have no idea. So it's
adorable.
I think I would attribute that, and that just kind of came to me. I was just talking I would definitely attribute like my ability to socialize and engage folks as that. I think that's amazing.
We never had a board game
Really?
in our house. No, and my father didn't allow any books in the house either. He was afraid. My mother was brilliant, and I was brilliant. And
he did. He wanted to oppress this?
Yeah. He was afraid that smart people can do unbelievable things. So, and my love of reading. I'm a voracious reader.
Yeah.
And my mother would sneak Thomas à Kempis or Benedictine books because she was so Catholic. She would take them out of the library at church and we'd sneak them. But when you grow up with a tyrant, and again,
gosh.
I think on the Calm app, when somebody yesterday at the meeting I was at, my presentation talked about, she loved the storytelling part of the app. And she said, don't you remember, Dr. Hall, that you loved storytelling, when you were a child? And I said, I've never had a book read to me in my life until my husband bought Women Who Run with Wolves when Clarissa Estes Pinkola wrote it in the 90s. And he would sit there at night to me, stack up the pillows and read me one story a night from the book and sit there lovingly reading to me.
Be careful. I'm going to fall in love with Jim if you don't watch out now. I'm gunning for that guy.
He's very sweet.
That man is a keeper.
Yeah, he said.
Good Lord.
He said, I love reading to you, and I love to watch you while I read. So anyway,
man.
Family gathering night, big one. Organize. Hey, it's a great time. It's still nasty. It's pre-spring, spring. Organize. Have each child organize a dresser a week or a drawer. It doesn't have to be some big deluge. Think of it as a purging, as a something to get rid of things. You can, and then after Easter, have some kind of sale, have a garage sale or whatever.
Or take it, donate it. All the
donate
stuff.
it, and then take them to a donation place and show them all the good things that happen at Goodwill or Salvation Army. All these amazing places. Plus, you're teaching them organizational skills. And then another thing is you can take the 40 days to move your body. Do Zumba. You guys know that. You can go on YouTube, go on anything.
Yeah.
And or you can go on Gaia, which I love their app, and do yoga, family yoga, kid yoga, Zumba. You can do anything.
Dedicate
dance,
yourself
play.
to do a walk every day.
Exactly.
Just take a 10-minute walk every day. Walk up and down the street.
Yeah, go to Costco or go somewhere. Buy one of those. I bought one for my daughter. Buy a basketball hoop. Put it outside. I put it in her driveway with a basketball. Shoot a couple hoops or, whatever a night. I mean, our daughter, was an All-American basketball player. We bought one of those things when she was, I don't know, second grade or something. Little did we know. Before we knew it, she was shooting 300, 400, 500 baskets a night.
Wow.
And became I
never knew that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She became a great, great athlete. But we played every night. We walked. We had a badminton net in the back. This is not money. It doesn't cost much.
Yeah.
And a basketball hoop. Every night of our life at 7 o'clock. We ate at 5:30. And at 7 o'clock, there was some kind of family exercise thing going on. And here's the other thing about guys moving your body during these 40 days. When you have a spouse or a partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, when you have a child or whatever, it's when you're I'm trying to think of the word I'm trying to use. When you are just doing a tactic or an event, for an example, we sit down. How was your day, Bailey? Did anything happen? Anything exciting? And we're eating the mashed potatoes.
The redundancy.
And then it's kind of regurgitation. There's something. Mahatma Gandhi's grandson, Arun Gandhi, and Jimmy Carter taught me this. And of course, my Buddhist friends, the Dalai Lama and Thich Nhat Hanh, whom I'm a student of, they talked about the power of walking and moving. And what happens is there's a vulnerability and an openness to it that you will say and disclose things that you never would by sitting across from somebody and saying, "How was your day, my daughter?"
Oh.
So for an example, when I could be at dinner and say, "Brittany, how was your day, honey, at school?" "Oh, fine, Mom, blah." But when we went on our family walk, by the time we got to the end of the block, she might touch my hand and go, "Sarah failed a test today," or her mother got divorced. Or, it's like an unfolding of the soul because there's this magical energy when we move our bodies that open our hearts.
I 100% wholeheartedly agree.
And there's a disclosure that's so intimate.
It's like if your body is doing something, left foot, right foot, foot, right foot, and you kind of go, then it's like almost the mind, not necessarily wanders, but opens up to different things.
Yes.
I have a great example. Some of the most heartfelt talks, deepest talks I've ever had with my dad were over a game of catch.
Huh.
You're just
oh God, that's
catch
beautiful.
it, throw it, catch it, throw it, and then that's like I've had a lot of heart-to-hearts with male friends. It's like guys have this stigma, we're not going to talk about our feelings. That's some of the deepest stuff I've ever discussed with other men. It's just over a game of catch.
It's funny.
So I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Again, we'll have to do another one on this. The only time my father was a very, as you well know, violent, cruel man, very disturbed, bless his heart, just a horribly savage life. And the only time he was intimate was when we would leave Ohio and go down to the coal mines in Kentucky. The coal was cheaper at night if you could get a truck and go down and pick it up.
Uh-huh.
And so he would go down.
You guys used it for fuel, like in the winter?
Well, what happened was he would deliver it to people in the farms in Ohio.
Oh, okay.
And deliver it the next morning. But I was the oldest girl, and he really, in some weird, bizarre way, loved me. So I got to go with him in these freezing cold pickup truck in the middle of the night, snow, whatever. And he would buy me a hot chocolate. It was the kindest he ever was to me, and he would talk to me. And it was the only time. And I remember being down there in the coal chutes, a little tiny girl, 5 years old with braids, you can imagine, big-eyed. Mm-hmm. And he'd get out and you'd go under these huge things and they'd dump the coal in the back of your truck. You can imagine under these huge vat things.
Yeah.
And the dust, the coal dust. And I remember sitting there looking at my hot chocolate thinking how special and beautiful I was that he talked to me, even though I had 12 blankets on me because there was no heat. I'm down in Kentucky in the middle of the night. And then I'll never forget when I'd go home and we'd get home about 3 or 4 in the morning, I'd be freezing to death. And standing on the heat coming out of those registers with the heat. And then couldn't sleep because I was so excited because he would deliver it at 7 or 8 in the morning to the customers.
Yeah.
And then if I got to take off school to go to the delivery when he put the chutes in, you drive up to their basement, put the chute in, and then deliver it. And then they'd put the cash in his hand. And then at the end of the day of delivering coal, he'd give me like $5.
Whoa.
And I remember the happiest or the most unbelievably exhilarating moments of my life were the coal runs. I need to think about that. It was really, really cool.
Wow, what an interesting juxtaposition. The best memories of your childhood next to coal. Yeah. And the freezing cold.
And the coal mine and snow and everything else.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. And the coal miners, going down there, the people at night, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, that was about moving your body. And then next, technology shut down. Come on, guys, shut it down.
I mean, geez, this goes without even saying.
Yeah, that goes without even saying. We all know. We just cut it
hours.
down. If you're 3 hours a night on Facebook, then try to cut it to just for 40 days. Come on, do it for 40 days. You can do it, and tell everybody on your Facebook, right, or your Twitter feed. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Spread the word. Say, hey, let's do this, man. Let's get a community to do it. And then instead of regurgitating for 3 hours, we are mindfully going to be on for an hour instead.
Right.
And we're going to filter what we say and try to uplift each other, and also see what comes up for each other and support each other.
Yeah.
And then finally, read. Please read. We are not reading anymore. Our children aren't reading. Nobody's reading.
Give up the Facebook and trade it for a book.
We have,
for crying out loud,
unbelievable science that shows what reading does to the brain, what it does to the soul, developmentally, what it does to a child. Children that read succeed in every avenue. We know that.
Yeah.
It feeds the body, the mind, the soul, and again, here we go with self-discipline. And finally, last but not least, a tip, which Bailey knows this. I have a tribe of women. I have 2 tribes, actually. I've got Tribe 1 and Tribe 2. And we have 2 groups of women that meet.
Very clever naming.
and very different. And so what we do is, and did this years ago, we took the 40 days, and we mindfully chose a word every day. And he sees this calendar I have in front of me.
Yeah.
And it's got 40 days. And then we chose a word each day that all of us, because we live all over the city of Atlanta, that we would mindfully, look at it.
Channel that word.
Yeah, we would immerse ourselves in that word. And then we texted each other on what came up for us that day on our group text.
Yeah.
For that day. We did it for 40 days. And truly transformational. I'm really serious. So for an example, the first day of Lent on the Wednesday was awareness. The second day, we and they chose innocence. We chose guilt, things like shame, denial, boundaries were some of the words we chose, hatred, despair, all kinds of duty was one word that one of us wanted, doubt, commitment, all kinds of words, honesty. And it's amazing that when you have an anchor of a word, in each day a different word, what comes up. So then what we decided to do was the word that we used then the next year, same calendar, same words. We did it with our partners. I did it at work. So it kind of spread that, and I'm thinking of maybe doing a book now with words because I've amassed over all these years unbelievable reflections on each word and concept that we chose for each day for 40 days.
Wow, each word's a chapter.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's it. I know this was short and sweet, but as you can tell, I'm in love with Lent, and I wanted to. Again, we come from different perspectives. You're a young, beautiful man, yet but 30-ish, and me of my wisdom, aging age, and so I just really wanted to, weave together. The distance with look at this. We even talked about something that makes the distance in gender, age, ethnicity, whatever.
You kind of
gone.
evaporate.
Evaporate.
Yeah. That's awesome. Guys, Thank y'all so much for being here today. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen. We've been looking at all the listens and downloads, and it's been really overwhelming, guys. Just really honored to be a part of this.
Absolutely.
Make sure you check us out on the web at mindfullivingnetwork.com or at ourmln.com, ourmln.com. And if you have any suggestions for any future episodes or you'd like a shout out, email us at info@mindfullivingnetwork.com. Do us a favor, follow us on social media and tell us what you're planning on doing for Lent. Are you going to be giving up anything? Because we're really curious to see what it is.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I love this.
Awesome. Guys, once again, thanks for being here. My name is John Bailey. Call me Bailey, and this is The Way I See It.
And my name is Dr. Kathleen Hall. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it just a millionth as much as we did. Have a great day. Thank you.